there are so many of us committed to improving the lives of the youth in our communities. The In It for Youth podcast is a place for us to come together, from professionals who work with and serve youth to those that champion issues affecting children, to community advocates and stakeholders, and insightful young minds too. The In It for Youth podcast is a tapestry of voices united by a dedication to youth well-being and empowering the young generations of today and tomorrow. I'm your host, Jamie Gale, and I'm so glad you've joined me on this team that is in it for youth. Hello and welcome back to the show. I am really excited to introduce you to my guest today. There's such a wide variety of ways that we all work to make a difference in the lives of kids. Some of us who work in heart-centered roles that you find in every neighborhood, and others like my guest today in truly unique ways. I'm joined today by Ally Garin. Ally is the program director for Camp Discovery, a summer camp for kids living with a chronic skin condition ranging from eczema and psoriasis to vitiligo and alopecia and many more. This camp is put on by the American Academy of Dermatology. In addition to her work with Camp Discovery, Ally is the communications coordinator for the third largest school district in Minnesota, and she is the mom to a 4-year-old girl and 1-year-old boy. Ally has her bachelor's degree and her project management certificate from the University of Minnesota. Ally, congratulations on all of your impact on youth well-being, and welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
So Camp Discovery sounds like a really wonderful place. Camp in general is very near and dear to my heart, but I would really love to hear more about what happens at Camp Discovery and the ways that you and your team serve youth there.
Yeah, I knew this would be like your first question, right? And it's, as you can imagine, it's impossible to put camp into a few sentences. So I'll try my best.
Okay.
So a little bit about camp. First of all, I was a camper myself. I started going when I was 11 years old. I'm now 23. I have one of the skin conditions that you mentioned, vitiligo, which causes loss of pigment in the skin. But this camp, it started out as just 1 week in Minnesota, and now it has transformed to many weeks across 6 different states. So that's pretty exciting. I direct the Minnesota camp, and we do have directors at the 5 other locations. So it's grown exponentially in my 23 years. It's just the best place on earth. Like you said, it's for kids with chronic skin conditions. So it is a wide variety. We get hundreds of kids, and so alopecia is the loss of hair. Doesn't really affect their health besides cosmetically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a big deal. Mm-hmm. They come with more self-esteem issues and things like that. But then we've got other campers that do have chronic conditions that affect their physical health. So what happens at camp, we serve a couple hundred campers per week, and they fly in from all over the United States. So that's one thing that's unique about this camp. It's not local. We bring in these kids that have these pretty rare conditions. They fly in, we pick them up at the airport, and we drive to camp. What that looks like every day is probably your typical camp experience. And that is really special for these kids because they wouldn't get a typical camp experience somewhere else. We have dermatologists on site, nurses, staff members, adults with chronic skin conditions, and we pretty much play and treat these kids normal. And that's the magic, really.
Yeah. That's really cool. So you were starting to say that there are some kids that have alopecia. I know you said there's a huge variety and that some of them are really rare, but what are the other types of things if someone doesn't have any knowledge of what types of skin conditions that kids experience?
Some of them are really rare, and I think that's why it's such a magical place. A lot of these kids, myself included, have never met anybody else in the world with their condition, right? Like for the first time you meet someone else that looks like you, that has experienced the same issues as you. So yes, alopecia is the loss of hair, which can be anything from missing a couple patches to complete hair loss, no eyelashes, no eyebrows, that sort of thing. Our most severe skin condition is called epidermolysis bullosa, and it's basically a connective tissue disorder. So it makes these kids extremely fragile. So if I were to bump someone with EB, we call it EB for short, so I'll probably keep calling it, that's easier to say. They would get an opened wound or a huge blister, and those remain there. They have a hard time healing any kind of injury that they get. And so over time, the scar tissue causes them to lose their digits. So a lot of times they don't have use of their fingers or their toes, and it causes their body to be wrapped sometimes up to 90% in bandages. So like I said, these kids wouldn't get a camp experience anywhere else. And that's especially true for these kids because our dermatologists help them with their bandage changes. And those can sometimes take up to 8 hours.
Wow.
So yes, 4 to 8 hours typically, where they have to take these off, treat the wounds, get new dressing changes, and then come back to play. And then we have to take, extra care for these kiddos. We try to have them do everything everyone else does. So if we go tubing, we take them tubing, but we go early when no one else is on the water and make sure someone else is in the tube with them. So we just really specialize. So that's one. I mean, I could keep going. There's anything from like sensitivity to the sun. So kids that need to be in the shade and wear all kinds of garments when they're outside. There's ichthyosis, which is basically an issue with the shedding of the skin, and it causes large scaly kind of features on their skin. They can't sweat. They have issues with their vision. There's so many, but those are kind of some of the big names that we see every year.
That is really incredible, that just the way that you described how your goal is to give these kids like a camp experience, really like the way that camp exists is so amazing. And like, I've got waves of goosebumps as you're talking, because that is so incredible and so special. So how is your staff structure set up? Like you mentioned that you have these medical providers, healthcare providers, but then are there like camp counselors that sleep in the bunks with them? Like, how does this all work? Yeah.
It's a pretty magical machine. So there is a campsite called Camp Knutson. So that's the location. And because, like I said, we fly everybody in for these 2 weeks in Minnesota, for example, we fly in staff and we fly in dermatologists and nurses. So our staff includes the docs, dermatologists, nurses, and counselors, and they're all volunteers, which is incredible. We fly them in. The American Academy of Dermatology pays for their flights and also pays for all the campers. That's a really big piece that I will just mention here, is that the American Academy of Dermatology makes this a no-cost camp for every kid. So that's amazing too, right? So everybody, despite the economic situation, can come and enjoy it. So I know that's really special. But the staff that volunteers, we've got people like myself who've been coming for more than 20 years, right? Who were campers, who came as staff, just keep coming back year after year. We also have new folks every year. And a lot of times we have medical students that are interested in dermatology, wanting to learn a little bit more about how these kids are affected and how they can help them when they go into their practice. And then there is and yes, they do sleep in the bunks with the kids. I don't have to anymore, which is kind of nice. And then there's a staff at the camp that we go to, and they run the activities. So we bring in the staff to help facilitate play and hygiene and all that kind of stuff. But the people that run like canoeing and kayaking and all that, they're at the camp that we just show up to.
Wow.
Which I also worked on that staff as well. It's kind of confusing, but that's where I met my husband. So I loved this camp so much as a kid. I would only go for 1 week. And then I was like, oh man, I got to work there for a whole summer. Wouldn't that be fun?
The lure of camp.
Yeah. Then I worked there for a whole summer, which that physical location helps kids with all sorts of things: Down syndrome, autism, HIV and AIDS, youth experiencing homelessness, all kinds of stuff. So I worked there for 2 summers on that staff, and then came back as the director of Camp Discovery, the skin camp.
So Camp Knutson is the host site, and they specialize in these sort of, specialty camps that come in to serve these different groups of people.
That's exactly right. Yes.
How cool. That is so cool. Okay. So when you're talking about blending the team of Camp Knutson, who is there throughout the summer, with your team for Camp Discovery, how do you, just when you take any group of kids, even healthy, typically developing kids who don't have any quote extras, that's its own whole depth of understanding about how groups of kids function, where kids are developmentally, all of that. And then you have all these sort of additional specialty needs between the health things. And then, like you mentioned, the social emotional pieces that they experience in the rest of their lives. Like, how do you, as the director, make sure that everybody is moving in the same direction with those things?
Luckily, we've got incredible kids and incredible staff. Not that it's not hard work, right? We've always got something going. We're always trying our best to help every kid. They've all got their own individual needs, but everybody wants to be there. And so it just works. Everybody is their best, absolute best self. And so it just kind of happens organically. Honestly, everybody just comes together really naturally, which is awesome.
That's really, really special. That's really, really cool. So there's obviously the medical aspect of, like you mentioned, the bandage changes, the keeping the kids physically safe from the sun or whatever it is that their needs are. But how do you and your team handle discussions and questions from the kids about the different conditions that kids and the campers or the staff too come with? I'm sure that some of the questions are easy to explain or answer, or there's just a general understanding, amongst everybody, but kids are kids. And so they may say or ask things that require kind of like a delicate conversation. So how do you guys handle that at camp?
Well, what's really cool is that actually really doesn't happen.
Wow.
So, here and there, but for the most part, the thing that is special about this camp is that this is where the kids with skin conditions magically don't have them anymore. It's kind of how it works, right? So nobody asks them what's wrong with you. Obviously, there's oh, I have that too, and what medicine do you use, or things like that, where you see someone who has something similar to you, or where do you get your wig, or things like that happen. But this is why, like, even when I've been doing this for 23 years, and even when I come on a call with you, I'm like, oh gosh, I hope she doesn't ask me too much about the skin diseases, because I truly don't know that much about them, because we just treat them like kids. And so it's really not about that. Of course, if they have these conversations organically of like, oh man, I get made fun of, and here's what it feels like, and here's how I handle it. Or if they ask me, that can happen organically, but it's not part of the plan. We don't have like circle sessions where we talk about what we've got. And it's really just, everyone comes and we kind of say, just don't talk about it. If you want to, go ahead, but we're just here to have fun and play. And so, yeah, that's really not a focus of it. I do a staff training, and when they come, I make sure that that's clear, that this isn't for the med students. Like, it's not time to learn. It's really just, if you've got questions, you can ask me, you can ask a dermatologist, but really for the most part, we just hang out.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, really cool. It's almost like you create the infrastructure so that they can just come to camp.
That's exactly right.
That's so cool. And so then I guess it would just be contained to when there is, like you were mentioning, for the kids who you have to make sure that you don't bump or don't, throw a ball at or things like that.
Right. So, and that's pretty well just understood, right? You can tell how fragile these kids are, and, or kids just say what they need. I need a break. I have to get up early to take a bath, because some of our kids have to soak their skin for a couple hours every day. I got to go take my medicine. That's kind of when everybody takes medicine. Yeah. So it's like at mealtime, it's like, go get your meds. Everybody goes and gets their meds. Nobody, looks twice or asks questions. The kitchen staff there is incredible. We've got a lot of food needs too. A lot of gluten-free kids, peanut-free, a lot of conditions like eczema kind of naturally pair with some allergies. So yeah, even all these kids are eating different meals too. And nobody really asks the kids with EB. They're on soft diets. They have to eat things like mashed potatoes and scrambled eggs. Yeah.
One of the parts of my work is that I am the camp co-director for a creative arts summer day camp. And it's a day camp. They're 1-week sessions also. And of course, we have some allergies, some health things that we're dealing with the campers that just come in any general population of kids. And even in that sort of contained setting, we realize we are taking care of other people's babies, right? They're elementary school age and middle school, but like they are still someone else's kid. And we take that very seriously. And even in this very contained, 5-hour a day creative arts play environment, some parents still want to be very involved in what is happening during the day, or we kind of navigate that. And so now you're taking other people's babies, especially the ones with the health conditions, that these parents have had to be even more involved in their kids every little moment. And so they are sending them to you for a week. And so I'm really so curious what those conversations are like with families to be like, here's my baby for the week. Everybody's child is their baby.
I know. Can you even imagine?
Yeah.
And not only like you don't drop them off, and like some of these families have never even set foot on camp, right? Because they take them to the airport and they come in. And so, yeah, a lot of these kids fly in an airplane for the very first time coming to camp. They fly unaccompanied minor, come to a whole different state, and then trust us to take care of them, put them back on a plane and get them home. And yeah, like you said, they're medically fragile. Those conversations, I think it's through testimony really of other campers that parents feel at ease. And once a child has come to camp once, that's really the hurdle. Sometimes parents will fly with their kid and come up and see it, especially when they're really little. We start taking them at 8 years old. But for the most part, they've talked to somebody else who's come. They've talked to the med staff that we've got. We reassure them. It's really, through testimony of other campers, other staff members. They really trust us. And yeah, we've had a great track record. And I really have to say the parents, let go and let us. And because they know that their kids just have a wonderful time. So we're pretty blessed. We're lucky. Yeah.
I'm sure that the distinction of being part of the American Academy of Dermatology also helps. Like they know this is lots of resources behind this camp. So that probably also helps.
I mean, if they're going to send their kid anywhere, this is the place.
Right.
And they know too, the location where we're going, like you mentioned, is set up to serve. For example, we make sure there's a ball field where a helicopter can land, right? And there's pathways to the waterfront if an emergency vehicle needs to get there. We have golf carts on site. So that's one of my main jobs. I'm the taxi driver for the kids with mobility issues, is getting them around. So when they learn about all the resources we have in place to make sure their kids are comfortable, I do give them a lot of credit for trusting us. But I just think it's such a unique opportunity for these kids. I kind of can't say no. gotta let them try it. Yeah.
Right. And in some ways, maybe for some of these families that have had to be very hands-on all day with these bandage changes or the treatments, this is maybe a form of respite for the parents as well. That they, that's probably, I realize that's not your main goal, but.
No, it is. It absolutely is. And sometimes kids will come and the dermatologists, after working with the kids for a week, call the parents, have recommendation, there's kind of some aftercare relationships as well with some of those high needs kids. So it's a really special experience. And I know those parents definitely can take a deep breath and relax, which is nice.
That's so great. That's really special. So back to the topic of these conversations, it's really magical that at camp, like you said, it's almost a non-issue because the infrastructure is there. But for the non-camp setting, for a family or a classroom that doesn't have a lot of experience with these types of conversations, especially around something as visible as the skin, do you have any advice about how adults should be responding to or handling questions or statements from kids about any differences they notice, like I guess whether that is skin conditions or otherwise?
I guess I would use the words kindly curious. All of the kids that I've worked through for many, many years have never said they have a problem telling someone about their condition. It's just when someone approaches them in a way that is unkind, that it makes them feel unsafe, scared, sad, self-conscious. And I've experienced that myself. From my perspective, if someone is kindly curious and they come up and say, oh, tell me about that, instead of, what's wrong with you? Or what happened? Or is that contagious? Things like that. I think people need to be unassuming as well. People will assume our kids are contagious, that our kids can't do things, can do things. A big thing I would definitely recommend for people, if they interact with a kid in a wheelchair, which of course, we serve many. They're smaller maybe than their age and obviously have mobility issues, but I would really encourage people to talk to them in a way that's appropriate for their age. These kids have said to me, everyone comes and talks to me like I'm a baby, right? Or like, oh, do you need help? And these are perfectly capable, smart kids that just want to be treated that way. The way that I approach our kids is they tell me if they need help. I'm going to let them know that I'm there for them, and whatever they need, they can ask me, but I'm not going to assume they need me to cut their food or that they need a ride or that whatever it might be. They are pretty good about asking for help when they need it and taking care of themselves otherwise. So yeah, just kindly curious, open for discussion. It is a huge thing for a lot of these kids. And if you can imagine us at the airport, there's 50 or 60 of us misfit kids all together. So we're quite a sight. So even there, we do get some looks and some questions and some out of the box kind of approaches, and we try to always go high and, but yeah, I think I've never met a kid that wasn't willing to talk about it if they're approached in a kind way. And I think, if you've got a really little one who maybe doesn't understand how to do that, if they just see something and say something, I don't want parents to say, shh, don't ask them or, anything like that. We want to talk about it. We want to spread awareness. There's nothing wrong with us, we're happy to tell you and teach people. So if a little is like, oh, what's going on? Mom or dad could go up and say, hey, my daughter was wondering about that. And everybody's a little different and how they would, I think everyone would agree that would be the best approach. Some people might say, oh, don't talk to me, or don't come near me.
Right.
But I think that would be pretty universal.
And so our listeners are people who work with and serve youth. And so in a general population, so there's the kid piece, right? The kid part of the conversation. But then as I'm running, let's say my camp or another classroom setting where I'm walking in as a substitute teacher or, maybe you are teaching music lessons one-on-one and you have a kid who walks in who there is some sort of skin condition or other noticeable difference. As an adult, I recognize that there is no one right way to deal with this, but do you have any words to recommend of like how to just, like you said, kindly and curiously ask that student if they do need anything? It's like, we don't want to call attention to it, but at the same time, we don't want to ignore something that is obviously very central to the way the kid moves through the world. Obviously, a lot doesn't need to be pointed out, but if there is something that might look like a health condition or something that might impact the way that they interact with what we're doing, I'm just curious if you have any suggestions on that.
Yeah, I think every kid is different. So I would probably privately ask them in private. For example, when I was in 4th grade, I moved to a new school and I asked the teacher if I could just stand up in front of the class and tell everybody what was wrong. Because I was like, I'm not about to have all 30 of these kids ask me and then I have to repeat myself 30 times. And I just want to lay down the law and tell everybody what's up. So that's me though. And I know not everybody would approach it that way. And she let me do it. And that was wonderful. But I think privately and kindly, you can say, hey, I know you've got this. I think it's more, you got to treat them as a kid first and the thing second. So I wouldn't only focus on that thing. We're sick of being kind of identified by that thing. Hey, this is Ally. You're smart and you're cool. And I really like this and, create a relationship. And then also, I know you've got this thing. Let me know if you need help, but it can be as simple as that. It doesn't need to be a big conversation or anything. Just a simple, I got you is good. And the parents will do a good job of typically connecting with other grownups and letting them know what their kid needs. Sometimes they say the kid needs more than they really need. I see that a lot. They've got parents that are really overprotective and kid comes and they're totally fine and independent. And especially some of these fragile kids. I think we give them the opportunity probably for the first time to really just see what they can do on their own, which is really special. I think too, one of the really special things someone without any extras, as you said, can do. So whether you're the teacher or a friend or a parent or another kid, is just lead by example. Treat them just like you treat everybody else, and the other littles will follow. And so I think that's really important. So if someone comes into your classroom in a wheelchair or comes into your classroom with whatever it is they might need, just treat them how you treat anybody else. And yeah, I remember coming to camp, and that was actually one of the most magical things was some of these staff members who didn't have a skin condition. I remember specifically getting a high five and not feeling like they looked at my hand or were concerned about giving me a high five or anything like that. Because my hands are one of the places where my vitiligo shows the most. And I feel like people always think it's contagious because of touching, right? So that's one of the most powerful things for me, when someone that was quote unquote normal treated me like I was normal. So I think leading by example is also extremely powerful.
I love that. It feels like that is the whole entire mission of your entire camp.
Yeah.
Is that letting the kids show up as they are and creating as quote normal of a camp experience as you possibly can for them. And that is really, 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 really cool.
It's so fun.
That's really wonderful. So the rest of your year, besides camp, I'm sure that you do a lot of work for camp outside of the actual camp weeks, but besides that, you also have a leadership role in your school job. So can you fill us in on what that role is and a little bit about what you do there?
Sure. I love my job. I really do. So I'm the communications coordinator for District 196. It's the third largest district in Minnesota. So we serve 30,000 kids.
Wow.
I know. It's amazing. We've got 19 elementary schools, 6 middle schools, 5 high schools. And so, similarly to camp, I get to just share incredible stories and learn about incredible kids. And so I think that's the through line, is that the focus in our district too is on serving the whole student. They are being challenged in our school system, academically, athletically, in the arts, and we get to celebrate them for what they are able to do. And I think maybe that's how they're similar, is just celebrating a person, in this case, children, but celebrating a person for where they excel. And so with communications, I do whatever I can to up-level those incredible stories of kids in our district doing the things they do best, and making sure that all our staff members have the tools that they need to also communicate to their communities about what we're achieving. It's not just academically, right? These kids are all accomplishing great things in many areas.
So is that through like social media and newsletters? Like, what are the ways that you get those stories out?
Yeah, it's a lot of ways. So I do internal and external communications. I work in public education, so our team is small and mighty. I do manage the websites for the district, and also we've got 35 other sites that have websites that we do support for. There's mass notification systems, so you get a message, text messaging, emails, that sort of thing, newsletters. We've got print newsletters, social media channels. I'm also the graphic designer. So I design everything that we put out, any flyers, anything else like that. Yeah, it's pretty involved. Any presentations that go to the school board or to the community. Yeah, it's kind of endless. I wouldn't even know where to start and stop. Okay. But yeah, you name some of the big ones.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything that you or Camp Discovery need from our listener community? Like, what are ways that we can help? Do you have any asks to make?
I mean, I'm sure your community already has a pretty good hold on kids. But my biggest ask, I think, would be, what you kind of asked me about earlier, is how to be kindly curious to our population of kids, because they just want to be normal, Yeah. I don't know if this is okay to say, but I'm kind of just take us for where we are. You don't have to ask. I do wish people would just approach our kids and just take them as they are, and not have to know that one part of them. You know what I mean?
Not everybody has to understand exactly what is going on.
Yeah. I don't know if that's okay to say, but I kind of feel that way.
Well, then it's okay to say. You're an expert in this. This is why you're here.
If you notice something different, I mean, we don't have to point it out. We don't have to know. Right. But be okay with accepting and knowing that person just as they come to you with what they're willing to share with you.
That was so good. Be okay with knowing what they share with you. That's huge.
I think that's it. I mean, like, and of course it's okay to ask. That's why I don't want to say don't ask, but I would love to encourage people to just take others as they are. That would be big. And
Mhm.
also tell people about Camp Discovery. Everyone should go.
That was my next question was if you have a kid or you know of a kid in your school, how could they get someone involved in Camp Discovery? Is there like an application process, or how does someone become a camper?
One of the most amazing things about us is that we take kids from anywhere, right? So you don't have to live in Minnesota where I'm located in order to come. And again, we have 6 different locations. So I would do the Minnesota camp, but we've got camps in Texas and California, Washington. So the way a kid can come is if they go to our website, Camp Discovery's website, there's an application form. We start accepting applications, but we pretty much accept kids until we can't.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that we need is a referral from a dermatologist. And that's basically so we have a good hold on what your condition is and what your needs will be so that we can make sure we have everything you need before you arrive. And that's it. So anybody can apply to any of our camps, staff included. So you might be a grown-up with a skin condition too. And it's really important that we get successful, wonderful, kind grown-ups with skin conditions to come and serve as volunteers for the week so that our kids can see themselves as successful, kind grown-ups and have great examples. So I would also encourage any adult to apply to volunteer. Again, it's totally paid for by the American Academy of Dermatology staff and campers. So there really isn't a barrier financially. So come join us.
That's really wonderful. So, and you said that the youngest campers are 8, and then what age do campers age out?
16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're working on a young adult retreat. This is going to be our first year doing that, but we're only opening it up to previous campers at the moment. But we're piloting that. We're always looking for ways to grow what we offer the kids too.
That's really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. The question that I always ask at the end of the interview is if you could wave a magic wand on behalf of kids in 2024, what would you wish for them and what messages would you tell them?
That's a big question. You said the word wish, which made me think of something. I was trying to reflect a little bit before I met with you today. And I was remembering that when I was a kid, I used to wish for my disease to go away. I would wish on every birthday candle. I would wish on every 4-leaf clover. I would wish every time I went over a bridge or whatever kind of thing, these opportunities to make wishes came, a penny in the pond. And then I remember when that went away, when I started accepting myself for who I was and being grateful for what I was given. So if I could wave a magic wand for the kids today, my wish would be that they could stop wishing to be something else and that they could learn to love themselves for what they've got. I'm getting emotional. My wish would be that they would learn to accept themselves for who they are, for what they've been given, and look for the great opportunities that they have because of who they are with what they have. So yeah, I think my wish would be for kids to truly and fully accept themselves and each other for where they are, for who they are. Yeah, because it breaks my heart that anybody was like me, right? And that they're wishing away some of the things that are most special and unique about them. So that would be my wish.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Well, Ally, thank you so much for joining me on the show today and for being in it for youth. We will link everything in the show notes so people can learn more about Camp Discovery. If someone wanted to reach out to ask more questions about it, would that just be on that same website, or is there another way to get in touch with you?
Yep. All the contact information would be there.
Okay. Well, thank you for talking with me and sharing about your magical camp. It sounds really incredible, and for all the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Jamie.
And to all the listeners, thank you so much for being here today, and we'll be back next time with another inspiring interview. In It for Youth is a Lit Path Studios production. Music is by Inspiring Audio and Pond 5. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And to learn more about this show and all other shows on the network, visit www.litpathstudios.com.